Hey guys, it's Miss Johnson and I'm here to bring you our notes for Unit 5 Notes 3, which is on the quadratic formula. So our learning target for today is I can solve quadratics using the quadratic formula. So up at the top of your notes for today, we are going to start with just reviewing radicals and simplifying radicals and square roots. It's a really nice thing in this lesson to know what your perfect squares are. So things like 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, and so on. Those things are all perfect squares, and those are going to be really good for you to know in this unit. So let's just look up at the top. Now, we all know that the square root of 16 is going to give me positive 4. When I throw a negative out front, like in the next one over, the negative square root of 25, take the square root of 25, and that's 5, but then make a negative, and so I'm looking at negative 5 there. It's kind of like saying multiply by a negative 1. So yeah, that makes that 5 a negative. In the one below it, if I simplify underneath the radical first, I use my order of operations. 34 stays the same. 2 times 3 times 3 gives me 18, so I'm going to subtract 18. And then 34 minus 18 is 16. Now the square root is the very last thing that I'm going to do. The square root of 16 is 4. That radical symbol is really like a grouping symbol. It groups everything that's underneath together, and I need to put all of those, or I need to simplify all of those underneath before I take the square root. In the next one, the plus or minus, this thing is red, plus or minus. And that really just says that there's two different solutions here. There's the positive version and the negative version. So the square root of 49 is 7. I want plus or minus 7 here. And you can leave your solution like that, or you could have said 7 comma negative 7. That's another way of writing that out. It's just recognizing that there's actually two solutions. In the next one, the next row down, 3 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 2. Again, simplify underneath that radical first. So underneath the radical, I have the square root of 9, and then I have minus 4 times 2 times 2 is going to give me, or times negative 2 is going to give me negative 16, but that minus and negative is really adding. So 9 plus 16 is 25, and I end up with the square root of 5 there, or the square root of 25, which is 5. If I simplify this one, 5 squared, and now I got some stuff outside, but I still need to take care of what's underneath the radical first. So I'm going to leave that negative 7 minus alone for now, and then underneath the radical, simplify there. I've got negative 5 squared, which is positive 25. Be careful typing that into your calculator. Notice there's parentheses around there. That's for a reason. If you don't put parentheses around it when you type it into your calculator won't square the negative, and it'll tell you negative 25, which we all know when we square a negative, it makes it positive. So finishing underneath that radical, I have minus 4 times 1 times 4, which is 16. So I have negative 7 minus 25 minus 16, which is 9. And then take the square root of 9, and I get negative 7 minus 3. Negative 7 minus 3 is negative 10. Now, this last one, 11 plus or minus, notice that plus or minus again, that tells you that there's going to be two solutions. You want to take 11 plus all of that stuff and 11 minus all of that stuff. So if I do that, simplify under the radical first, so I'm going to leave that 11 plus or minus alone for now. And then I take negative 7 squared, which is positive 49, minus 4 times 5 times 2, which 4 times 5 times 2 is 40, so minus 40. Then 11 plus or minus, 49 minus 40 is 9. And taking the square root of that, I have 11 plus or minus 3. Now, I can't leave, I'm not done yet. I can't leave that like that. This is kind of like saying there's two solutions. I've got 11 plus 3, which is 14, and I've got 11 minus 3, which is 8. So these are both solutions. And again, you might see them listed with a comma. They're not an ordered pair because they're both x values. They're both solutions to the equation. Kind of like when we factored and had those two solutions, they were both x values. So now, this leads us into the quadratic formula. So let's first just take a second and write the quadratic formula down, because it's kind of a lengthy, long one. Here's what it looks like. So in the quadratic formula, sorry, that's kind of hard to see. Let's see if I can put a box behind it. The quadratic formula looks like this. I've got x is equal to, come here, trying to make that box visible. And then we'll send it to the back. There we go. There, that's a little better. So quadratic formula, x is equal to the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. It's a long, lengthy formula, so hopefully you got a chance to write that down. You can go ahead and pause your video if you need to. Now let's just talk about what the quadratic formula does for us. This formula solves quadratics to find the roots or solutions or zeros. Those are all ways of saying solutions to a quadratic. The equation has to be set equal to 0 in order for us to solve it. And we can use it in place of factoring. So we were factoring and solving before, but not all equations are factorable. So if all equations aren't factorable, then we have to have another way to solve, and the quadratic formula gives us that. So I'm going to show you the steps to the quadratic formula, and I want you to pause the video, or to using it, I want you to pause the video and take a second to write them down. So here's our steps. First, we find what a, b, and c are. Then we plug them into the formula, then we simplify, and we round our two answers to 2 decimal places. Again, remember that you can pause the video at any point if you want to take a minute to write it down. Okay, so now let's put this into practice. Oh, and by the way, before we move into our practice questions, if you Google or go to YouTube and search the quadratic formula, there are tons and tons and tons of funny little songs that people have written, skits that people have done that help you remember the quadratic formula because it's so long and lengthy. So if you Google that tonight or YouTube it, see if you can find some clever songs that teach you the quadratic formula. It's pretty interesting. So here I go. I am going to start with identifying my a, my b, and my c. So a is equal to 3, b is equal to -7, c is equal to -20. Now in the formula, here's what the formula looks like again. So I have x is equal to the opposite of b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac, and that's all over 2 times a. So let's put that in. Let's plug in our numbers. I've got x equals the opposite of b. If b is -7, that means it's going to turn into +7. Then I have plus or minus the square root of b squared, again, put it in parentheses when you square it in your calculator, minus 4 times 3 times -20. There's -20 there. Ooh. All over 2 times a, which is 3. And you can just watch me simplify. It gets kind of crazy in here. So I've got to start underneath the radical. I've got 7 plus or minus the square root of 49, because -7 squared is +49, and then -4 times 3 times -20 is +240, all over 6. Sorry, I forgot to close my parenthesis there. 2 times 3 gives me 6. So let's keep going. When I add those together, I have 7 plus or minus 49 and 240 is 289. All divided by 6. Notice that my division is under the whole thing, not just the radical, the whole thing. It's a very common mistake that people make. Keep going. Simplify the square root of 289. 289 is one of those perfect squares. If you knew your list of perfect squares, that would help you. Square root of 289 is 17, all over 6. Now, here's where life gets interesting. So I have 2 solutions here, 2 possibilities. I need to take 7 plus 17, and I need to take 7 minus 17, and then divide by 6. So on one side, I'm going to have x equals 7 plus 17 over 6, and the other one is going to be x equals 7 minus 17 over 6. So, and yes, these are long. Now you know why there's a lot of space on these pages. So 7 plus 17 gives me hello, 7 plus 17 is 24. There we go. 24 divided by 6, x is equal to 4. Then 7 minus 17, x is equal to negative 10 divided by 6, or x is equal to negative 5/3. And you can make that a decimal. We could also call that negative 1.67 if we round to the second decimal place. So either one of those would be true. You can write it as a fraction or a decimal. Here's your two solutions. Circle them up, and whew, we're there. All right, that was one practice question for today. We're going to save the rest of the practice questions for tomorrow, and we'll go from there. So this concludes our video for tonight. Please remember to hop back to Schoology and take your quiz, and I will see you all tomorrow. Thanks for watching.